You stand on a polished marble floor. The scent of beeswax and old money hangs in the air. Sunlight streams through tall, ornate windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the silence. This grand Victorian mansion whispers tales of splendor and privilege, a world of opulent balls and lavish dinners. But beneath this glittering surface, unseen and often unheard, operated a vast, complex engine. You are about to step beyond the velvet ropes and into a hidden realm, a meticulously organized society of individuals whose lives were entirely dedicated to maintaining this illusion. We will discover the true stories of the men and women who cleaned, cooked, served, and silently powered these magnificent homes. Their secrets, their struggles, their forbidden dreams await your exploration. The illusion of effortless grandeur you see was no trick of magic. It was a meticulously choreographed ballet performed daily by dozens, sometimes hundreds, of unseen hands. To understand the true heartbeat of these magnificent houses, you must descend with us, away from the glittering ballrooms and serene drawing rooms, into the very foundations where the true work unfolded. Imagine yourself stepping away from the sunlit opulence. You turn your back on the sweeping staircase and the grand portraits, moving instead towards a modest, unassuming door. It is often hidden, cleverly disguised within the wall paneling, or tucked discreetly behind a heavy curtain. You push it open and the air changes instantly. The temperature drops a few degrees. The scent of beeswax and floral arrangements gives way to something earthier, a mix of coal dust, cooking fat, damp stone, and the faint, ever-present smell of human endeavor. This is the threshold to the invisible engine, the vast, subterranean world that hummed beneath the lives of the wealthy. You find yourself in a narrow passage, dimly lit, often by gaslight even in the daytime, or by small high windows that offer only a sliver of the world above. These are the servants' corridors, the arteries and veins of the house. They snake through the foundations, connecting all the vital organs of the domestic machine. Unlike the wide, ornate hallways upstairs, these passages are functional, utilitarian. The walls are often painted a drab cream or gray, designed for durability and easy cleaning, not aesthetic pleasure. Here there are no paintings, no vases of fresh flowers. Only efficiency matters. As you walk, you might hear a distant clang from the kitchens, the soft scuff of a hurried boot, or the rhythmic thud of a mangle in the laundry. These are the sounds of the engine at work. This hidden world was a mirror image of the grand house above, but inverted. While the family slept in luxurious silence, downstairs, the household was already stirring long before dawn. Consider the sheer scale. A grand Victorian house was not simply a dwelling. It was a complex organism requiring constant, intensive care. A household of any significant size, say 5 to 10 family members, might employ anywhere from a dozen to 50 or even 100 servants, depending on the estate's size and the family's wealth. Each one had a specific role, a cog in the elaborate machine. From the dignified butler and the formidable housekeeper at the top of the servant hierarchy, all the way down to the scullery maid and the boot boy, every individual had a part to play in maintaining the illusion of effortless luxury. Let's trace the journey of a single day, beginning in the earliest hours. Long before the first member of the family awoke, the house came alive with activity below stairs. You would hear the creak of floorboards as housemaids, dressed in plain print dresses and sturdy aprons, crept from their shared sleeping quarters. Their first task, often in near darkness, was to light the fires. Every fireplace in every reception room, every bedroom, needed to be cleaned of yesterday's ash, laid with kindling and coal and carefully ignited. Imagine the chill of a winter morning, your hands numb with cold as you coax reluctant embers into flame, knowing that the comfort of the family depended entirely on your diligence. Meanwhile, in the vast, steamy labyrinth of the kitchen, the cook and her assistants would already be at work. The scent of wood smoke from the ranges, mingled with boiling water and baking bread, would fill the air. The fires for the immense kitchen range, the very heart of the house's culinary operations, would have been stoked hours ago. Produce would be brought up from the cool larders and cellars. Meat from the game larder, vegetables from the kitchen garden, eggs from the poultry house. All prepared with meticulous precision. A grand dinner, for example, might involve 7 courses or more, each requiring multiple complex preparations, all executed in a kitchen that was both intensely hot and astonishingly cramped, despite its size. Venture further into the depths and you discover the laundry. This was a realm of perpetual steam and hard physical labor. Mountains of linens, from delicate lace to robust sheets, were scrubbed, boiled in huge copper coppers, rinsed, starched, and then, perhaps most laboriously, ironed. Imagine the sheer weight of wet laundry, the blistering heat from the irons, some heated on the stove, others filled with hot coals, and the endless hours spent pressing every tablecloth, every shirt, every handkerchief to pristine perfection. A large family could easily produce hundreds of items of laundry each week, all needing this intense, manual care. The bell system was the nervous system of this invisible engine. Throughout the servants' passages, banks of bells hung on springs, each one connected by a complex network of wires to a specific room upstairs. A faint ding from the dining room, a sharp tinkle from the drawing room, a persistent jingle from the master's bedroom. Each bell, with its distinct tone and location, was a command, a summons. You, as a footman or housemaid, had to recognize the sound instantly, know where it originated, and respond with alacrity. Hesitation was not an option. This constant state of readiness, this perpetual awareness of the needs above stairs, defined the servant's existence. You were always on call, always observing, always anticipating. You learned to move silently, to open and close doors without a sound, to anticipate a request before it was even voiced. The ideal servant was a ghost, a helpful presence that was seen only when absolutely necessary, and then immediately vanished. Privacy was a luxury unknown to you in this world. Servants often slept in shared rooms, sometimes in cramped attics or basements, far from the comfortable beds they made for their employers. Your time off was minimal, perhaps one afternoon a week if you were lucky, and a Sunday service at church. Your life was structured around the rhythm of the house, not your own desires. Your meals were taken in the servants' hall, a functional space far removed from the elegant dining room where you served. Your conversations were discreet, your grievances often unspoken. The meticulous organization was not just about efficiency, it was about maintaining a strict social order. The servants themselves had their own hierarchy, a rigid pecking order. The butler and housekeeper ruled their respective domains with absolute authority, often acting as formidable gatekeepers between the family and the lower staff. Disobedience, sloppiness, or a breach of etiquette could lead to a severe reprimand, or even instant dismissal. For many, dismissal meant homelessness and destitution, a terrifying prospect that kept the invisible engine running smoothly, fueled by diligence and fear. So, as you re-emerge from these hidden passages, back into the grand sunlit rooms, try to look at them differently. The gleaming silver on the sideboard, the spotless porcelain, the freshly pressed linens, the roaring fire in the grate, the perfectly arranged flowers, none of it appeared by magic. Every detail, every comfort, was the product of immense, often invisible labor. These grand estates, symbols of wealth and leisure, were in fact colossal machines, powered entirely by human exertion, dedication, and often silent sacrifice. You have glimpsed the true power source, the human engine, that made the Victorian dream possible. To truly understand this invisible engine, you must witness its daily rhythm, a silent ballet choreographed by duty and the clock. Imagine the profound stillness that cloaks a grand Victorian mansion just before dawn. The gas lamps are out. The fires in the family rooms have long since died to embers. A profound darkness fills the vast spaces upstairs, where the family sleeps soundly, blissfully unaware of the world stirring below. But downstairs, in the network of passages and cramped sleeping quarters, life has already begun. The first to rise are often the scullery maid and the boot boy, shivering as they emerge from their beds, perhaps in a windowless room or an attic space, their breath misting in the frigid air. It is 4 or 5 in the morning, sometimes even earlier. No gentle alarm clock here, only the ingrained habit of rising before the sun, before anyone else. You follow the scullery maid down a narrow winding back stair, her bare feet patting softly on the cold stone. She carries a small candle, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows that exaggerate the grime and dampness of the service areas. Her first task: light the fires. Not just one but many. The kitchen range, the scullery stove, and a dozen or more grates in the drawing rooms, dining room, library, and family bedrooms. Each fire requires careful laying of kindling, coal, and patience, coaxing flames to life in the pre-dawn chill. Smoke billows briefly before finding its way up the chimney, leaving the acrid scent of ash and soot hanging in the air. Meanwhile, the boot boy is in the boot room, a small dark space with rows upon rows of shoes and boots. His hands, still stiff from sleep, set to work. Each pair must be meticulously cleaned, polished to a mirror sheen, the laces straightened, ready for the family and upper servants to step into later. This is not a quick wipe. This is a dedicated, repetitive ritual, an act of silent devotion to the household's image. As the first fires begin to glow, the kitchen staff arrive. The cook, often a formidable figure, surveys her domain, planning the day's meals. Kitchen maids begin to fetch water, scrub pots and pans left from the previous night, and prepare vegetables. The air slowly fills with the sounds of industry, the clatter of crockery, the murmur of low voices, the rhythmic scrubbing. Upstairs, a housemaid or two are already moving through the principal rooms. You watch as one carefully draws back the heavy curtains in the drawing room, allowing a sliver of weak morning light to penetrate the gloom. She dusts the polished surfaces, straightens furniture, plumps cushions, and makes sure every ornament is in its rightful place. Every movement is practiced, precise, designed to be efficient and silent. She is a ghost, present but unseen, heard but unnoticed. The very air must be undisturbed by her presence. Soon, the footmen and parlor maids join the early morning ballet. They set the breakfast table in the dining room, laying out the finest linens, gleaming silverware, and delicate china. The array of food that will soon grace this table is staggering for a single family: eggs, bacon, kippers, toast, preserves, tea, coffee, hot chocolate. All prepared and presented with exactitude. You stand in the hallway as the family finally begins to stir. The rustle of silk from upstairs, the soft chime of a bell, a summons. A maid hurries to attend to a lady's dressing, bringing hot water for washing, helping with corsets and petticoats, brushing hair. Downstairs, a valet is already assisting the master with his clothes, ensuring his attire is impeccable for the day ahead. By the time the family gathers for breakfast, the downstairs staff have already completed hours of strenuous work. They move in and out of the dining room with a graceful efficiency, anticipating every need. A cup of tea is refilled before it is empty. A fresh plate of toast appears as if by magic. There are no direct questions, no casual conversation. Orders are given through subtle signals, a nod, a glance, an unspoken command understood by years of training. The morning unfolds as a continuous cycle of cleaning, polishing, and preparing. Beds are made, often by two housemaids working in perfect synchronicity to achieve the taut, uncreased perfection expected. Carpets are swept, rugs beaten outdoors, floors scrubbed. The laundry maids are now fully engaged, bent over steaming tubs, scrubbing clothes by hand, wringing them out, hanging them to dry in the laundry room or outdoors on lines. The sheer volume of laundry in a large household was immense, a never-ending task involving harsh soaps and back-breaking labor. In the kitchen, the cook and her assistants are preparing for luncheon, then immediately shifting focus to the evening's grand dinner. The scullery maid, having finished with the fires, is now knee-deep in dirty dishes, perpetually scrubbing away the remnants of the family's meals. Her hands are raw, often cracked and bleeding from the constant exposure to hot water and harsh lye soap. For those servants with outdoor duties, the day is equally demanding. The stable hands tend to the horses, cleaning stalls, grooming the animals, polishing harnesses. Gardeners cultivate vast flower beds and manicured lawns, their work visible through every window of the grand house, but their presence kept at a distance. As the afternoon wanes, the tempo of the downstairs life does not slacken. The drawing rooms and libraries are tidied once more, coal scuttles are refilled, lamps are cleaned and prepared for lighting. Every surface that might bear the touch of a family member or a guest must gleam. Every corner must be free of dust, every piece of silver spotless. The evening brings its own frantic rush. The family dresses for dinner, often changing into elaborate evening wear. Servants are once again in attendance, helping with fastenings, retrieving items, ensuring perfection. Then comes the elaborate dinner service itself. Footmen stand at attention, ready to serve multiple courses, often working long into the night if the family entertains guests. The butler orchestrates this grand performance, a silent maestro ensuring every detail is flawless. After the family has retired to the drawing room, the entire dining room must be cleared. The table stripped, dishes washed, silver polished again, and the room reset for the next morning. The kitchen, which saw a frenzy of activity all day, is finally cleaned and made ready for a new dawn. Fires are banked for the night. Lamps are extinguished. By midnight or even later, the last servant can finally retreat to their cramped quarters. You see the sheer exhaustion etched on their faces. The muscles ache, the hands are sore, the mind is weary. There is little time for personal reflection, for hobbies, for genuine rest. A few precious hours of sleep, and then the cycle begins again. This is the silent ballet, a relentless, demanding performance played out day after day, year after year. It is a life lived in the shadows, fueled by an unwavering commitment to duty, often without thanks, always without question. It is the hidden truth of Victorian grandeur, the constant, invisible human effort that sustained a world of opulent leisure. You have seen how the engine runs, how the Victorian dream was not simply imagined, but relentlessly, tirelessly, brought to life through the labor of these unseen hands. The very architecture of the Victorian mansion, grand and imposing, often concealed a profound duality. You stand now in the polished grandeur of the entrance hall, sunlight streaming through tall windows, glinting off the ornate plasterwork above. The air here might carry the faint scent of beeswax and fresh flowers, perhaps the distant echo of polite conversation or the soft rustle of silk. This is the world of the family, a stage set for leisure, for social performance, for the display of wealth and taste. You see the sweeping staircase designed to be admired, its balustrade gleaming. This is the above-stairs domain, a world of visible elegance and prescribed decorum. But to truly understand the heartbeat of this house, you must step beyond the drawing rooms and libraries. You turn away from the sunlight, from the imposing front door, and seek a different path. You might find a discreet, narrow door tucked almost invisibly into a paneled wall, or perhaps a turn past the main staircase, leading to a much less adorned, steeper flight of steps. You are descending now into a realm designed for efficiency, for labor, a place where practicality reigns supreme over aesthetics. The air changes here, growing cooler, perhaps carrying the faint, earthy smell of coal, the sharp scent of carbolic soap, or the distant aroma of roasting meat. You are now below stairs. This is not a single, isolated room, but an intricate network of specialized spaces, each with its own purpose, its own demands. Imagine a labyrinth beneath the polished surface of the grand house. You walk down a stone corridor lit by small, often grimy windows set high near the ceiling, or by the flickering gaslight of a single jet. The sounds are different too. No delicate piano melodies here, but the clatter of pots and pans, the rhythmic thud of laundry being scrubbed, the murmur of voices speaking in hushed tones or sharp commands. The kitchen is the pulsating heart of this subterranean world. You push open a heavy, often swinging door and are immediately enveloped in a cloud of steam and heat. The massive range, a black iron monster, dominates the room, perpetually roaring with fire, emitting waves of warmth. Copper pots hang from hooks, gleaming dully from constant use. You see the cook, a formidable figure, presiding over her domain with the authority of a general. Her face is flushed from the heat, her hands deft as she chops, stirs, and directs. Near her, the kitchen maid scurries, carrying heavy loads, peeling endless vegetables, always alert to the cook's next instruction. Further in, the scullery maid, the lowest in the kitchen hierarchy, toils in a perpetual state of dampness, scrubbing grease from hundreds of dishes and pots in a vast stone sink, her hands red and raw. Beyond the kitchen you find the pantry, a cool, dark sanctuary filled with shelves stacked high with provisions. Rows of gleaming jams, spices in carefully labeled jars, sacks of flour, and hanging cured meats. The air here is rich with the scent of dried herbs and ripening cheeses. The butler, a man of immense responsibility and quiet dignity, oversees this domain, meticulously cataloging every item, ensuring the smooth flow of goods to the dining table above. He is the principal male servant, a bridge between the two worlds, privy to the family's secrets yet utterly bound by his station. Next, you pass the laundry room, a humid inferno where the laundry maids spend their days wrestling with vast quantities of fabric. You hear the rhythmic splash of water, the hiss of steam from heavy flat irons, the faint scent of lye. Imagine the sheer physical effort involved in washing, rinsing, wringing, starching, and ironing every item of clothing, every sheet, every tablecloth, often by hand for an entire household. From delicate lace to heavy blankets, each piece demanded meticulous attention. The servants' hall is a rare space of communal life. Here, away from the watchful eyes of the family, the rigid hierarchy of the day might momentarily soften. You might catch snippets of conversation over simple meals, hear laughter, or the quiet murmur of shared grievances. This is where friendships form, where news from the outside world is shared, often filtered through the limited access servants had to newspapers or letters. For a brief hour or two, they can shed the deferential masks they wear above stairs and simply be themselves, or as close to themselves as their demanding lives allowed. But even here, hierarchy persists. The housekeeper, often a stern but fair woman, maintains order and discipline, overseeing the female staff with a keen eye. She holds the keys to the linen closets and storerooms, her domain extending to every bedroom, every corridor. Her relationship with the lady's maid is often complex. Both serve the mistress directly, but their responsibilities differ. The lady's maid, often more refined, closer to the mistress's personal life, assists with dressing, hair, and private correspondence. She lives a life that is almost above stairs by proxy, but never truly crosses the invisible line of class. The life of a Victorian servant was a paradox of extreme proximity and immense distance. You, as an invisible observer, might follow a footman as he ascends the main staircase, carrying a tray of tea to the drawing room. He is impeccably dressed, silent, efficient. His eyes scan the room, noting every detail, every change in arrangement. He hears the family's conversations, their arguments, their plans, their gossip. He is present for their most intimate moments, their triumphs, their sorrows. Yet he is expected to see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. His true thoughts, his opinions, his own life, remain hidden behind an impassive facade. Consider the sheer volume of personal knowledge these servants accumulated. They knew the family's habits, their quirks, their secret vices, their hidden kindnesses. They saw the unwatched moments, the unguarded expressions. They knew who truly loved whom, who feigned affection, who struggled with debts, who harbored hidden ambitions. This knowledge, locked away behind a mask of professional discretion, formed a kind of unspoken power. Yet, to reveal it, to break the unspoken code of silence, meant instant dismissal, often with no reference, a devastating blow in a world with limited options. You walk through the servants' passageways, narrow and unlit, designed for swift, unseen movement. These passages allowed servants to move from one part of the house to another without being seen by the family or their guests. A footman could appear as if by magic in the dining room with a fresh plate, a housemaid could vanish with a tray of dirty dishes, all without disrupting the illusion of effortless elegance above stairs. This architectural design reinforced the idea of the servant as an almost ethereal presence, serving but not seen, essential but ignored. Privacy was a luxury almost unknown below stairs. Servants slept in cramped, often shared quarters, sometimes in attics that were scorching in summer and freezing in winter, or in small rooms adjacent to the kitchen, where the noise and smells of the house were ever present. You see the worn mattresses, the shared wash basins, the few personal trinkets carefully arranged on a small shelf, a photograph, a ribbon, a small well-loved book. These were their only claims to individual space, their fragile attempts to carve out a corner of selfhood in a world that demanded their constant, selfless service. Their personal lives were often sacrificed to the demands of their employers. Courtship was difficult, marriage even more so. Many positions, particularly for women, stipulated that they remain unmarried. A married woman, it was believed, could not dedicate her full attention to her duties. Children were almost impossible. To choose a life of service was often to choose a life of celibacy, or at least one of extreme discretion. The emotional cost was immeasurable. Loneliness, suppressed desires, the constant yearning for a life of their own, away from the dictates of others. Yet, within this demanding structure, resilience flourished. You hear the quiet humor shared amongst the housemaids as they polish endless silver, the shared commiseration in the kitchen over a demanding master, the advice offered between a butler and a young footman learning the ropes. These bonds, forged in shared labor and common experience, provided a vital support system. They were a family of sorts, bound not by blood, but by circumstance, by the shared understanding of a life lived on the fringes of grandeur. The secret lives of servants were not just about hidden knowledge of their employers, but also about their own inner worlds. Their dreams, their aspirations, their quiet acts of defiance, their small joys found in a rare day off, a letter from home, a stolen moment of rest. They observed the world above them with keen eyes, forming their own judgments, their own critiques, unspoken but deeply felt. They were the silent witnesses to an era, the true chroniclers of the grand Victorian house, living two lives under one roof, one of public service, one of private selfhood, constantly intertwined yet eternally separate. You have walked the polished floors, above stairs, and felt the rough stone of the corridors below stairs. You have glimpsed the opulence of one world and the relentless toil of the other. These two realms, distinct in their purpose, their atmosphere, and their inhabitants, were inextricably linked. One could not exist without the other. The glittering facade of Victorian society was not merely supported, but meticulously constructed, piece by piece, day by day, by the invisible, dedicated lives of those who served. Their stories, often unheard, are the true foundations of the Gilded Age. The grand foundations of the Victorian house, those unseen structures built by dedicated hands, rested upon a bedrock of ceaseless demand. Your life as a servant within these opulent walls was not your own. It was a life governed by an unseen force, an insistent summons that could shatter any moment of peace, any brief flicker of personal thought. This force was the bell. Imagine yourself standing now in the vast, echoing space of the servants' hall, deep below the main floors. The air here is often thick with the scent of boiled cabbage, coal dust, and floor polish. Across one wall, a formidable wooden board stretches, pierced by dozens, perhaps even hundreds of small numbered brass bells. Each bell is connected by a thin wire, snaking through the very fabric of the house, to a specific room above stairs. When a master or mistress, a guest, or even a child, pulls a cord in their private sanctuary, a tiny mechanism springs to life in the depths of the house. A small indicator on the board flips open, revealing the room number, and the corresponding bell begins to ring. You hear it now. A sudden, sharp, metallic clamor. It cuts through the low murmur of conversation, the clatter of pots in the kitchen, the whisper of the scullery maid scrubbing. It is not a gentle chime but an urgent, peremptory demand. The sound reverberates through the stone corridors, a physical jolt. Your muscles tense. Your heart quickens. You glance automatically at the bell board, your eyes scanning the small brass faces, waiting for the indicator to drop, for the specific bell to quiver and sound its call. This is the tyranny of the ring. From the first hesitant peal before dawn until the final, exhausted summons late into the night, the bells dictate your existence. There is no escape. They are the extensions of the master's will, invisible chains that bind you to their every whim. You are not merely a person. You are an instrument always on standby, ready to respond to the instant command of another. Consider the early morning. Before the first rays of sun have truly kissed the windows above stairs, you are already awake. Perhaps you are a housemaid, shivering in the chill of the unheated scullery as you polish the silver. Suddenly a bell rings, not the kitchen bell or the boot room bell, but one from a bedroom on the second floor. It is Mrs. Davies, the mistress's personal maid. She needs warm water for the mistress's morning ablutions, or perhaps her corset has proven particularly recalcitrant this morning. You drop what you are doing, your hands still damp from the silver dip, and hurry, not daring to run but moving with practiced speed. The bell's echoes still seem to vibrate in your ears. The bells follow you throughout your day. You might be carefully laying out a dining room table, the starched linen pristine, the cutlery gleaming. Ding! A bell from the drawing room. A guest has arrived and requires tea. You must leave your current task, fetch the footman, help prepare the tray, and ascend the grand staircase, maintaining your composure, your pace, your respectful silence. The half-finished table setting waits, an unspoken rebuke for the interruption. Later, as you clean a quiet corridor, dust motes dancing in a sliver of sunlight, the house seems momentarily at peace. Perhaps you allow yourself a fleeting thought, a memory of home, a brief moment of mental respite. Then, without warning, the piercing clang of the master's study bell. He has dropped his spectacles. He requires a new pen. He simply wishes to know the time. It is never for anything of profound importance to you, but always of profound urgency to him. And you must go. Always. Immediately. The intensity of the bells is not just in their sound, but in their unrelenting frequency. Imagine an average day in a grand Victorian house. Breakfast, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, each meal generation requires a cascade of bell rings. The cook needs ingredients sent from the larder. The footman is summoned to serve. The parlor maid is called to clear. Guests arriving or departing generate their own symphony of summonses. Children, often left under the care of nannies, still have their own bells, signaling a need for water, a forgotten toy, or simply the desire for attention. You learn to interpret the bells. A slow, repeated ring might indicate impatience. A single, sharp peal might mean an urgent, immediate need. The bell from the master's study carried a different weight than the bell from a guest bedroom. The cook's bell, for example, might be an everyday call for basic supplies, but a bell from the nursery could signal a child's distress, requiring a more immediate and empathetic response. The psychological toll of this constant surveillance is immense. You are never truly off duty, even during your precious brief moments of rest below stairs. The sound of a bell could penetrate the thin walls of your attic bedroom, pulling you from a much-needed sleep. It could interrupt a rare conversation with a fellow servant, an instant of human connection shattered by the metallic insistence from above. Your nervous system is perpetually on alert, a finely tuned instrument waiting for the next jolt. There is a pervasive anxiety, a fear of missing a ring, of not responding swiftly enough. To delay was to risk a sharp rebuke, a reduction in wages, or even dismissal. Your efficiency, your worth, was measured by your instantaneous obedience to the bell's command. You existed in a state of perpetual readiness, your senses always attuned to the possibility of that sudden, intrusive sound. This constant vigilance breeds resentment, a simmering anger that could never be expressed. How often did a servant, rushing up 3 flights of stairs, only to find the master had rung for a triviality, feel a pang of bitterness? How many times did a tired maid, summoned late at night, silently curse the insensitivity of those above stairs who never paused to consider the lives they controlled with such casual authority? But these thoughts remained private, unspoken, buried deep beneath the required polite demeanor. The bells became a metaphor for your entire existence. They were the constant reminder of your place in the rigid hierarchy, the ever-present symbol of your subservience. They underscored the fundamental inequality of the Victorian household, the absolute power of the employer, the absolute dependency of the employee. The bell system, seemingly a mere convenience for the gentry, was in reality a sophisticated instrument of control, designed to extract maximum labor and immediate obedience from those who served. You are never truly alone. You are never truly at peace. Even in silence you wait. You listen. The potential for the next ring hangs in the air, an invisible weight. It shapes your movements, your thoughts, your very breath. The clang of the bell is not just a sound. It is the heartbeat of your working life, a relentless, unyielding rhythm that pulses through the very walls of the mansion, echoing the unspoken contract of your servitude. It is the inescapable, enduring soundtrack of life below stairs. You follow that invisible pulse, that soundtrack of servitude, deeper into the mansion's underbelly, past dimly lit passages and narrow staircases, until the air thickens, growing heavy with the smell of roasting meat and simmering stock, mingled with wood smoke and a faint, persistent scent of grease. Here the very walls seem to sweat. The sounds change too, a cacophony that drowns out the faint echo of distant bells. This is the kitchen, the fiery heart of the Victorian household, a realm of constant heat, relentless labor, and an unyielding mistress known only as the cook. You step over the threshold and the heat immediately presses in on you, a physical force. It is stifling, even oppressive, a stark contrast to the cool, quiet halls you have just left. The enormous cast-iron range dominates one entire wall, its many doors glowing with the fierce orange light of coal fires stoked to furnace intensity. Above it, a massive copper hood, blackened with years of soot and steam, attempts to channel the rising heat and smoke, but much of it escapes, swirling in the air, creating a hazy, shimmering atmosphere. The kitchen is a symphony of utilitarian noise. The rhythmic thud of a pestle in a mortar, crushing spices or herbs. The sharp, metallic scrape of knives on a chopping block, preparing mounds of vegetables. The hiss and sizzle of fat in a pan. The gentle bubbling of a stock pot, a deep, nourishing aroma rising from its surface. The clatter of heavy pots and pans being moved, scraped, and scrubbed. There is no quiet here, only the steady, industrious hum of production, punctuated by sudden shouts or sharp commands. The cook stands at the center of this maelstrom, a formidable figure whose presence fills the room. She is the undisputed monarch of this domain, her word law, her temper legendary. Her face is often flushed from the heat, her apron perpetually flour-dusted or spattered with the remnants of culinary battles. Her eyes, sharp and watchful, miss nothing. From the moment the first fires are kindled in the pre-dawn darkness until long after the last upstairs dinner plate is cleared, she commands her kingdom with an iron will. You feel her gaze sweep over you, assessing, judging. There is no room for idleness or inefficiency in her kitchen. Below her, in a strict pecking order, are the kitchen maid and the scullery maid. Their days are a blur of physical exertion, their hands perpetually engaged in some form of toil. The kitchen maid, often a young woman striving to prove her worth, is the cook's right hand. You watch her as she tirelessly chops mountains of onions and carrots, peels sacks of potatoes, and sifts vast quantities of flour. Her movements are practiced, efficient, learned through repetition and the occasional sharp reprimand. She lifts heavy copper saucepans, stirs bubbling stews for what feels like hours, and helps prepare the intricate garnishes for the elaborate dishes that will grace the master's table. Her role is to learn, to endure, and perhaps one day to ascend to the cook's demanding throne. But it is the scullery maid, often the youngest and newest to service, who inhabits the lowest rung of this culinary hierarchy. Her world is one of water, grease, and grime. You can see her now, bent over a deep stone sink, her hands plunged into scalding hot water laden with lye soap and the leavings of countless meals. Her task is endless, to scrub pots, pans, and every utensil to a spotless, gleaming perfection. The water is often cold by the time she gets to it, her skin chapped and reddened from the constant exposure to harsh soaps and steam. The sheer volume of dishes, not just from the family meals but also from the servants' hall, is staggering. Each piece must be meticulously cleaned, dried, and polished, a seemingly Sisyphean task that never truly ends. Imagine the sheer scale of raw ingredients that pass through this kitchen daily. Sides of beef, whole chickens, baskets of fresh fish, barrels of flour, sacks of sugar, crates of eggs. None of the pre-processed convenience foods of today exist. Every ingredient arrives in its rawest form, demanding laborious preparation. You see the kitchen staff plucking fowl, scaling fish, rendering fat, making pastry from scratch, churning butter, and even baking bread in vast quantities. The air is thick with the aroma of these transformations, from raw matter into culinary art. The pressure on the cook is immense. She is responsible for feeding the entire household, from the upstairs gentry to the lowest scullery maid, ensuring every meal is delivered on time, perfectly prepared and without fault. A burnt roast, a fallen soufflé, or a dish that arrives cold could lead to a severe dressing down from the mistress or worse, dismissal. Her reputation, and by extension the reputation of the entire household, rests on the quality of her cuisine. You can feel the tension in the air, a constant undercurrent of anxiety that drives every action. The days stretch long, beginning before dawn and often ending long after the family has retired for the night. You watch as the kitchen staff move with a weary efficiency, their bodies accustomed to the physical strain. Lifting heavy stock pots, carrying trays laden with food up and down flights of stairs, standing for hours on hard stone floors. The extreme heat of the kitchen in summer must be unbearable, a constant battle against fatigue and dehydration. In winter, while other parts of the house might be chilly, the kitchen remains an inferno, but with drafts that still nip at uncovered skin, particularly in the scullery where the cold water chills to the bone. The kitchen is also a place of social hierarchy and unspoken rules. While the cook holds absolute sway over her subordinates, she too is subject to the mistress's whims and culinary preferences. She might argue fiercely over the quality of a cut of meat from a purveyor, but she must ultimately defer to the lady of the house on menu choices. You observe the subtle negotiations, the quiet frustrations, and the moments of shared camaraderie amongst the staff, brief respites in the relentless grind. For the scullery maid, the kitchen can be a place of crushing loneliness. Isolated in her corner, amidst the steam and the clatter, her work is often solitary and thankless. While others might share gossip or complaints, she is often too busy, too exhausted, or too low in the pecking order to fully participate. Her hands are her life, and their constant immersion in water and harsh chemicals often leaves them cracked, reddened, and painful. This is the reality of the lowest-tier kitchen worker, a life defined by physical drudgery and the constant presence of dirt and heat. The kitchen, for all its heat and chaos, is also a source of life. It transforms raw elements into sustenance and pleasure. It is the engine of the household, a bustling, vibrant, and often punishing world that few outside its confines ever truly understood. You taste the faint sweetness of flour on your tongue, the sharp tang of onion in the air, the deep richness of rendered fat. You hear the rhythmic scrape of a knife, the sizzle of a pan, the heavy sigh of exhaustion. As the day draws to a close, and the upstairs dining room falls silent, the work in the kitchen does not cease. The fires are damped down but not extinguished. Pots and pans are cleaned and hung, surfaces scoured, floors swept. But the preparations for tomorrow begin even before today's work truly ends. Ingredients are laid out, menus reviewed, a silent promise of another day of fiery toil. The lingering warmth in the room, even after the fires dim, reminds you of the constant effort, the sheer physical and mental demand, that defined the life of those who toiled in this crucible. It is a world of unrelenting pressure, where every successful meal is a triumph, and every minor error a potential disaster. The kitchen truly is the heart of the mansion, beating with a ferocious, tireless rhythm, demanding everything from those who serve within its scorching walls, away from the relentless heat and clamor of the kitchen. Where raw effort defines every hour, you now step into a different realm of service. This is the domain of the butler, a world of quiet authority, polished surfaces, and meticulously managed details. If the kitchen is the heart of the mansion, beating with ferocious energy, then the butler's pantry and office are its precise, calculating brain, the nerve center from which order is maintained and luxury is orchestrated. You feel the air subtly shift here. The scents are different, not of roasting meat and boiling vegetables, but of beeswax and silver polish, old leather and the faint, sweet scent of aged wine. This is the realm of the head of the male staff, a man often second only to the master in terms of his control over the household's material possessions and its daily rhythm. He is a figure of quiet dignity, his uniform immaculate, his bearing composed, his eyes missing nothing. Imagine him now. He moves with a calm deliberation, his steps hushed on the thick carpet that often buffers his private quarters from the more public areas of the house. His very presence exudes an understated power, a mastery born of years of experience and an intimate understanding of the intricacies of aristocratic life. He is not merely a servant. He is a guardian, a manager, a confidant, and often, the true silent administrator of the household's grandeur. His office, often adjoining the pantry, is not a grand room. Instead, it is a practical space designed for efficiency and discretion. Here you see a heavy wooden desk, perhaps scarred with the marks of countless inventories and ledgers. Quill pens and ink pots sit ready, alongside stacks of household accounts, bills, and correspondence. This is where the unseen financial life of the mansion is meticulously documented, where every penny spent on supplies, every wage paid to a subordinate, is carefully recorded. The butler is often entrusted with a significant amount of the family's cash, managing expenses and ensuring the household runs smoothly without bothering the master with mundane financial details. His honesty and integrity are paramount, for he holds the purse strings of the domestic empire. Next to the office you find the pantry. This is not a larder filled with foodstuffs, but a treasure chest of the household's most precious items. You hear the faint, delicate clinking as a footman, under the butler's watchful eye, polishes a magnificent silver apron. The glint of highly polished silver is everywhere. Trays, tureens, candelabras, forks, spoons, and knives, all gleaming under the soft light. Each piece is meticulously cared for, an heirloom passed down through generations, its value both monetary and symbolic. The butler is the primary custodian of this immense silver collection, responsible for its safekeeping, its cleaning, and its proper deployment for every meal and special occasion. He knows the provenance of each piece, its history, its place in the family's narrative. Beyond the silver, you observe rows of fine china, delicate porcelain services, each pattern unique, each piece representing a specific occasion. The clatter and robust nature of the kitchen's everyday crockery are utterly absent here. Instead, there is a reverence for fragility, for beauty. The butler determines which service is used for which meal, ensuring that the presentation matches the importance of the guests or the formality of the occasion. He oversees the setting of the dining table, a ritual of precision and aesthetic judgment. Each fork, each knife, each glass must be perfectly aligned, reflecting the family's status and impeccable taste. The air in the pantry often carries the subtle aroma of spirits and wine. Indeed, one of the butler's most significant responsibilities lies beneath the house, in the cool, dark sanctuary of the wine cellar. You can almost feel the chill emanating from the unseen depths. This is his exclusive domain, a place where priceless vintages slumber in dusty bottles. He holds the only key, a heavy, ornate piece of metal that signifies his absolute control over the family's liquid assets. He is a connoisseur, expected to have a deep knowledge of wines, their origins, their vintages, their pairing with food. He carefully monitors stock, orders new supplies, and brings up bottles to be decanted at the precise moment before dinner. The proper serving of wine is an art form, requiring a steady hand, a keen eye, and an understanding of etiquette that few outside his profession could ever master. His duties extend far beyond managing valuables and accounts. The butler is the direct supervisor of all male household staff, the footmen, valets, stable hands, and sometimes even the coachman. He assigns their tasks, monitors their performance, and ensures discipline is maintained. You can almost hear the soft, authoritative tone of his voice as he issues instructions, a tone that commands respect without needing to resort to shouting. He is a master of delegation, a conductor orchestrating the symphony of service. The footmen, dressed in their livery, are his direct agents, serving at table, answering the door, running errands, always under his careful supervision. He trains them in the minutiae of service, from the correct way to announce a guest to the precise angle at which to offer a dish. The dining room itself is often the butler's grand stage. When the family entertains, it is he who orchestrates the flow of the meal, directing the footmen with subtle nods and glances. He stands at the head of the table, ever vigilant, anticipating every need, ensuring that conversation flows uninterrupted and that every guest feels attended to without ever feeling watched. He carves the meat, serves the sauces, pours the wine, all with an effortless grace that belies the immense training and concentration involved. His presence at the table is both commanding and discreet, a silent testament to the seamless operation of the household. But the butler's role is not just about material possessions or the mechanics of service. He is also a crucial interface between the family and the outside world, and often between the family and the rest of the staff. He is the first point of contact for visitors, the gatekeeper who determines who gains access to the master or mistress. He receives callers, delivers messages, and often screens unwanted intrusions with polite but firm diplomacy. He is privy to a vast amount of information, both personal and professional, about the family he serves. Their triumphs, their misfortunes, their quarrels, their secrets, all often pass through his ears, though he is expected to remain utterly discreet, a living vault of confidential knowledge. This closeness to the family, this intimate knowledge of their affairs, places a heavy burden on the butler. He must be utterly trustworthy, loyal to a fault, and possess an unwavering ability to keep silent. His position is one of immense trust, and a breach of that trust could mean not only his dismissal but also the ruin of his reputation in a world where good references were everything. He often develops a unique relationship with the master, acting as a personal valet, confidant, and even a sounding board. He might lay out the master's clothes, assist with dressing, and even offer quiet counsel if invited. This relationship can be complex, blending deference with a deep, almost paternalistic concern for the master's well-being and reputation. The pressures on the butler are constant. He works long hours, often starting before the family wakes and retiring long after they have gone to bed. His physical presence is required almost everywhere, from the dining room to the cellar to the front door. He must always be impeccable in appearance, perpetually calm and unfailingly polite, even under immense stress. Any imperfection in service, any missing item, any misstep by a subordinate, ultimately reflects on him. He carries the weight of the household's reputation on his shoulders. His secret life, then, is not one of clandestine activities, but rather one of profound responsibility and quiet power. It is the life of a man who sees everything, hears everything, and knows everything, yet is expected to reveal nothing. He is the keeper of the household's dignity, the manager of its vast wealth of objects, and the orchestrator of its daily rituals of comfort and display. He lives in a constant state of vigilance, a sentinel ensuring that the grand facade of Victorian gentility remains perfectly intact. His domain is one of meticulous order, where every object has its place, every action its purpose, and every moment contributes to the seamless illusion of effortless luxury. You can almost feel the weight of the keys in his hand, not just to the cellar, but to the entire domestic operation. He is the quiet force, the steady hand, the unwavering presence that allows the masters to live in a world of cultivated ease, entirely unaware of the complex, unseen machinery that hums beneath the surface, all thanks to the tireless dedication of the butler. His world is one of controlled elegance, a stark contrast to the boisterous energy of the kitchen, yet just as vital to the beating heart of the mansion. He is the ultimate guardian of grandeur. Beyond the watchful eye of the butler, an entire cohort moves with synchronized precision, a human clockwork operating just beneath the surface of Victorian opulence. These are the maids, the valets, the footmen, the living machinery of the grand house. Their days begin in the dim pre-dawn, long before the first rays of sun dare to touch the elaborate draperies of the master's bedroom. You are there, standing at the foot of the back stairs, feeling the chill of the unheated service corridors. The air is still heavy with the scent of coal smoke and candle wax from the previous night, now mingling with the faint aroma of freshly baked bread wafting from the distant kitchens. The house is a sleeping giant, but its heart, the servants' hall, is already beating with quiet purpose. You hear the soft scuffle of shoes, the rustle of starched aprons, the whispered instructions as the housemaids begin their ascent. Imagine a house of this scale, hundreds of rooms, thousands of objects, each demanding attention, each requiring meticulous care. It is an undertaking of epic proportions, an endless cycle of cleaning, polishing, stoking, and serving. The housemaids are the early risers, the unseen army that prepares the mansion for another day of grand living. Their work is a ballet of invisibility. You will never see them performing their arduous tasks when the family is awake, yet their presence is felt in every gleaming surface, every perfectly made bed, every glowing fireplace. You watch as they move with practiced efficiency, often starting in the family's private chambers. A fire must be lit, coaxed from embers into a roaring blaze to chase away the morning chill. You smell the rich scent of burning wood as they lay kindling and coal. Beds, monumental structures of carved wood and draped fabrics, are stripped and remade, sheets pulled taut, pillows fluffed to perfection. Dust motes, invisible in the gloom, are systematically banished from every surface, every ornament, every book on every shelf. Consider the parlor maid, her domain the public reception rooms. She polishes silver until it gleams with the intensity of moonlight. You can almost see your reflection in the highly polished surfaces of the dining table, a mirror-like expanse that will soon bear the weight of elaborate meals. She sweeps and vacuums carpets, often by hand, moving around heavy furniture with surprising strength. Every curtain is straightened, every cushion plumped, every flower arrangement meticulously adjusted. Her work is a constant battle against the relentless ingress of dust and the subtle disarray of human habitation. Then there is the lady's maid, a figure of more elevated standing, almost a confidant. Her world is one of intimate proximity to her mistress. You imagine her carefully laying out the elaborate clothing for the day, selecting delicate undergarments, corsets, petticoats, and gowns. She manages the wardrobe, repairing, pressing, and organizing every garment. She might assist with bathing, with hair styling, with the elaborate process of dressing. She knows the mistress's moods, her whims, her daily routines, often more intimately than anyone else in the household. Her loyalty is paramount, her discretion absolute. Her personal space, though still small, is often a corner of her mistress's dressing room, a subtle indicator of her higher status within the servant hierarchy. Across the mansion, in the gentleman's quarters, the valet holds a similar position of trust and responsibility. He is the master's shadow, his personal attendant. You might catch a glimpse of him as he prepares his master's morning shave, honing a razor to a perfect edge. He lays out clothing, meticulously selecting ties, waistcoats, and jackets to match the day's appointments. He ensures boots are polished to a mirror shine, almost indistinguishable from the parlor maid's work on the dining table. He manages his master's correspondence, packs his trunks for travel, and attends to his every personal need, from a midnight snack to a late-night brandy. The valet often possesses a sharp intellect and a keen understanding of the world, gleaned from his proximity to the master's affairs. He hears conversations, observes interactions, and becomes a repository of knowledge, both mundane and occasionally sensitive. His discretion is as vital as the lady's maid's. He represents his master's impeccable appearance to the world, a silent testament to the wealth and order of the household. His quarters are typically small but private, another mark of his specialized and valued role. And then the footmen. Tall, imposing figures often chosen for their stature and appearance. They are the public face of the male domestic staff, dressed in elaborate livery, reflecting the family's status. You see them standing by the front door, ready to open it with a deferential bow, or assisting ladies from carriages. Their presence is a statement, a display of wealth and prestige. They are the visible gears of the living machinery, the human adornments of the grand entrance. During formal dinners, you observe their coordinated movements. They serve courses with balletic precision, moving silently between guests, anticipating every need. Heavy silver platters are carried with ease, wine glasses are refilled before they are quite empty. They stand for hours, attentive and unmoving, a silent tableau of service. Their physical stamina is considerable, as is their training in etiquette and deportment. In the morning they polish the family silver, a task that can take hours, turning dull metal into glittering works of art. They run errands, deliver messages, and assist with any heavy lifting. Their life in the servants' hall is one of camaraderie and strict hierarchy, a world within a world, governed by its own rules and customs. They eat together, relax together in their limited free time, sharing stories and aspirations. Many dream of advancing, perhaps to a valet's position, or even in the distant future to become a butler. This complex ecosystem of human endeavor operates in constant motion. You realize that the entire illusion of effortless luxury rests upon the shoulders of these individuals, each performing their specific, often arduous, duties. The constant, quiet hum of their activity forms the true heartbeat of the Victorian mansion. They are not merely employees, they are integral parts of the household's identity, the silent architects of its comfort and grandeur. Their lives are often ones of immense sacrifice. Long hours, little pay, and even less personal freedom. Their rooms are typically stark, functional, and shared, a stark contrast to the lavishness they maintain for others. Their days are structured by bells, by duties, by the relentless demands of the master and mistress. Yet, within this rigid structure, they forge their own communities, find moments of joy, and nurture their own dreams. You can almost feel the calluses on a housemaid's hands from endless scrubbing, the ache in a footman's legs from hours of standing, the mental exhaustion of a valet keeping his master's complex life in order. They are the gears, the levers, the intricate cogs of this grand living machine. Their silent dedication makes the mansion breathe, allowing the gentlefolk above to glide through their days, often oblivious to the colossal effort that underpins their every comfort. They live in a world of paradox, constantly present yet utterly invisible, intimately connected to the family's life, yet forever separate. They are the living machinery, tirelessly working, forever polishing the grand illusion. Their stories, rarely told in the grand histories, are etched into the very fabric of these homes. Every polished banister, Every shining window, every perfectly laid fire whispers of their presence, their skill, their resilience. It is a world of quiet heroism, of lives dedicated to the service of others, a testament to the sheer scale of human labor and organization that built and maintained the gilded cage of Victorian splendor. You leave them now, still working, still moving as the sunlight finally streams into the master's drawing room, ready for another day that they have painstakingly created. You have seen them as extensions of the house, perpetually serving, their lives a relentless rhythm of chores. But even in this rigid hierarchy, beneath the starched aprons and the watchful eyes, there were moments, fleeting and precious, when a true self could emerge. Imagine yourself now, not as an observer but as one of them, living within these walls, your identity constantly being shaped and constrained by the demands of service. Consider the uniform. It is more than just clothing. It is a declaration, a symbol of your station, a constant reminder of who you are expected to be. The drab livery of the footman, the simple cotton dress and apron of the housemaid, the dark suit of the butler or the cook's practical attire. Each piece a uniform designed to erase individuality, to present a unified, efficient front to the gentlefolk upstairs. You don this uniform each morning, a ritual of transformation. The coarse fabric against your skin, the pins securing your cap, the tying of the apron strings. With each garment, you shed a little of who you are, becoming instead the housemaid, the valet, the cook. But the uniform also offers a strange kind of anonymity. Behind its rigid facade, within the collective sameness, you find a small space to hide. Your thoughts remain your own. Your dreams, unspoken, are shielded by the very fabric that defines your servitude. And when the day ends, when you finally retreat to your cramped attic room or the servants' hall, the shedding of that uniform becomes a quiet, personal rebellion. Each button unfastened, each tie undone, is a step back towards yourself. The worn dress is carefully folded, the polished boots placed aside, and for a few brief hours, you are not just a servant. You are a person with your own name, your own memories, your own quiet aspirations. It is in the servants' hall, a world away from the gilded drawing rooms, that these glimmers truly ignite. Imagine yourself there now, the gaslight flickering softly, casting long shadows on the scrubbed wooden table. The air, thick with the scent of cheap tobacco, stewed tea, and the day's forgotten dust, hums with a different kind of energy. Here the rigid rules of upstairs service loosen their grip. Here you are among your own. The hushed tones and polite deference demanded by the gentlefolk give way to frank exchanges, to laughter, to shared anxieties. These are the moments of genuine connection, woven from shared hardship and mutual understanding. You listen to the cook grumbling about the mistress's latest impossible dinner request, the footman recounting a near disaster with a tray of expensive china. You share stories of family left behind in distant villages, of letters rarely received, of the simple pleasures imagined for a future you might one day claim. These are the whispers that truly build a community, a secret society within the walls of the grand house. Stories are traded like precious currency, news from the outside world filtered through the experiences of those who have seen it, if only for a few snatched moments on an errand. You learn of political unrest, of new inventions, of lives lived far beyond the strict confines of your daily duties. These whispers are a lifeline, a reminder that a larger, more varied world exists beyond the estate gates. Within these conversations, you might hear the murmurs of dreams, whispered low enough to escape the ears of any unexpected visitor from upstairs. Perhaps a scullery made dreams of saving enough to open a small shop, selling ribbons or sweets. A stable boy yearns to travel, to see the seas he has only read about in smuggled books. The butler, for all his stern composure, might quietly confess a longing for a quiet cottage in the countryside, far from the demands of a master. These are not grand ambitions for most, but deeply personal ones, held close and nurtured in the dark hours, away from the scrutiny of the upper classes. They are the stolen dreams, snatched from the relentless grind of service, kept alive by hope and shared in hushed tones with trusted companions. Sometimes, these stolen dreams manifest in small, almost imperceptible acts of self-expression. A housemaid might keep a pressed flower in her Bible, a memento of a brief, sunlit moment. A footman might secretly doodle sketches on scraps of paper, his hidden talent for art blossoming unseen. A cook might experiment with a new flavor combination for the servant's own meal, a tiny creative rebellion against the strictures of the prescribed menu. These are not acts of defiance, not overtly. They are acts of preservation, of protecting a fragile inner world, a spark of individuality that refuses to be extinguished by the uniformity of their existence. You learn to find beauty in the mundane, to extract joy from the smallest allowances. A moment alone in the garden, a rare sunny afternoon when errands take you briefly beyond the gates, the warmth of a mug of tea shared with a friend. These tiny moments become immensely significant, punctuating the long hours of labor. Love, too, finds its way into these hidden corners. The grand houses, for all their formality, were hotbeds of clandestine romance. A shy glance exchanged across the servants' hall, a furtive touch in a darkened corridor, letters passed in secret. A cook might bake a special tart for a handsome footman. A chambermaid might mend a torn shirt for a stable boy, her fingers lingering longer than necessary. These are often dangerous liaisons, for any hint of impropriety could mean instant dismissal, a devastating loss of livelihood and reputation. But the human heart, for all its vulnerability, cannot be easily constrained. You might feel the flutter of your own heart as a certain gaze meets yours, as a shared joke brings a secret smile to your lips. The risk is high, but the potential reward of genuine connection, of being seen as more than just a servant, is a powerful draw. These stolen moments of affection, brief and precarious as they often were, offered a glimpse of a different kind of life, one governed by personal choice rather than dictated by the demands of a master. The world upstairs sees a unified, disciplined workforce. But you know the truth of the vibrant, complex lives being lived just beneath the surface. You know of the small acts of kindness, the rivalries, the friendships forged in the crucible of shared experience. You understand the intricate web of relationships that bind the servants together, a powerful, unspoken pact that helps them navigate the challenges of their daily existence. You are part of this network, a thread in its fabric, relying on others and being relied upon in turn. The solidarity is palpable, a quiet strength that carries them through the longest days and the harshest criticisms. Think of the rare occasions when servants were allowed a day off, perhaps to visit family or attend a fair. These were precious, fiercely guarded opportunities to step entirely out of their roles. You would shed your uniform with a sigh of relief, donning your own modest clothes that truly belonged to you and represented your identity outside of service. You might walk the streets as an ordinary person, blending into the crowds, enjoying the simple freedom of anonymity and choice. The sensation of walking without purpose, of choosing your own path however brief, would be exhilarating. You could buy a small treat, perhaps a ribbon for your hair or a penny dreadful to read in secret. These outings, though rare, were vital for maintaining a sense of self, a connection to the world beyond the mansion gates that they were so often denied. Even in their private spaces, the attic rooms or shared dormitories, each servant carefully cultivated a small corner of their own. A few treasured possessions, perhaps a faded photograph of family, a sentimental letter, a worn book, a small piece of pottery. These meager belongings, tucked away in a trunk or on a makeshift shelf, represented their connection to a life outside of service, a reminder of who they were before they entered the employ of the gentlefolk. You might carefully arrange your own few items, finding comfort in their familiarity, their silent testament to your personal history. This was your sanctuary, however small, where you could truly be yourself, where you could grieve, dream, or simply rest, unobserved and unjudged. The sheer discipline required to maintain this facade of cheerful obedience, while simultaneously nurturing a rich inner life, is extraordinary. It is a testament to the human spirit's ability to adapt, to resist, and to find agency even in the most restrictive of circumstances. You witness this resilience every day in yourself and in your fellow servants. The ability to present one face to the world upstairs and another, more authentic one, to your peers and to yourself, is a skill honed out of necessity. It is a quiet form of rebellion, a way of asserting your humanity in a system designed to diminish it. The masters of the house might believe they know you, that they see you clearly in your uniform, performing your duties. But they only see the surface, the carefully constructed persona. They do not hear the whispers in the servants' hall, do not know of the dreams you hold close to your heart, do not understand the individual you become when the uniform comes off. They are oblivious to the vibrant, complex tapestry of lives unfolding beneath their feet, a secret world teeming with emotion, ambition, and quiet defiance. And for you, this secret world is everything. It is where you find your strength, your identity, your hope for a future that might one day be your own. This secret world you inhabit, a world unseen by those upstairs, is not merely a refuge for your identity or a place to voice your quiet rebellions. It is also the very soil in which the most tender, most vulnerable parts of your humanity take root and sometimes bloom, your affections. In the confines of the servants' hall, the scullery, the narrow passageways, amidst the relentless routine, hearts found ways to connect, to yearn, to love. These were often affections deemed forbidden, hidden away from the prying eyes and rigid moral codes of the Victorian household. You live in close quarters, day in and day out, sharing hardship and small triumphs, privy to each other's true selves in a way no one upstairs ever could be. The intimacy of shared labor, the unspoken understanding that passes between you as you work side by side, peeling potatoes or polishing silver, creates bonds far deeper than mere collegiality. You see each other at your most tired, your most frustrated, your most hopeful. And in this shared existence, it is perhaps inevitable that more profound feelings would begin to stir. Consider the kitchen maid, her hands perpetually chapped from scrubbing, her face often smudged with soot. You might find yourself drawn to her quiet strength, the way she hums a tune under her breath when she thinks no one is listening, the flash of a genuine smile she reserves just for you. Or perhaps it is the footman, tall and disciplined in his livery, but whose eyes hold a surprising warmth when they meet yours across the bustling hall. A fleeting glance, a shared joke during a moment of respite, a touch of hands as you pass a heavy tray, these are the tiny sparks that ignite something deeper. Love among the servants was a delicate, dangerous flame. It was discouraged, often explicitly forbidden, for a multitude of reasons. The masters and mistresses upstairs believed that romantic attachments would distract from duty, lead to gossip, or even worse, to unwanted pregnancies that would be a stain on the household's reputation. A house was meant to run like a clockwork mechanism, and the messy, unpredictable nature of human affection was seen as a wrench in the gears. For you, to fall in love with a fellow servant meant entering a clandestine world within your already clandestine world. A realm of whispered promises and stolen moments. Imagine the risk you take. A note slipped into a pocket while serving dinner, a hurried conversation in the pantry when the cook's back is turned, a touch of hands beneath the table in the servants' hall. Every interaction is charged with a quiet thrill, an underlying tension of discovery. A mistress might send a maid to fetch something, only to find her chatting with a footman. Such an innocent scene could lead to immediate dismissal for both, not just for idleness, but for the unspoken implication of impropriety. The specter of unemployment, of being cast out onto the unforgiving streets, loomed large over every secret glance. Sometimes these affections were not just forbidden by the household rules, but by the rigid class structure of the era itself. A housemaid might fall for the butler, an impossible match given his superior position and the expectation that he would eventually marry someone of his own slightly higher standing, or perhaps even one day run his own establishment. The hierarchy extended even to the servants' hall, creating its own invisible barriers. And then there were the affections that defied even stricter societal norms, loves that dared not speak their names. For those whose hearts were drawn to members of their own sex, the risks were exponentially greater. In an age where such relationships were not only condemned but criminalized, the very act of feeling, let alone expressing, such love was an act of profound courage and vulnerability. These were secrets held so deeply, so carefully, that they rarely left the confines of one's own heart, or perhaps were shared only with one other, under cover of absolute darkness and silence. The solace found in such connections, however fleeting or unacknowledged, must have been immense, a lifeline in a world that offered little understanding. The emotional landscape of the servant's world was a complex tapestry of longing and restraint. You suppressed so much of yourself for your masters, your opinions, your fatigue, your true feelings. To then find a space, however small and risky, to express genuine affection, to feel truly seen and desired by another, was a profound release. It was an affirmation of your own worth, a reminder that you were not merely a cog in the machine, but a human being capable of deep emotion. You learned to read micro-expressions, to understand silent signals. A quick flicker of the eyes, a certain way a name is spoken, the casual brush of a shoulder that lingers just a moment too long. These are the languages of the heart spoken in code. You find ways to engineer proximity, to create moments where you can be near the object of your affection, even if it is only to share the same air. Perhaps you volunteer for a task that will take you to the same corridor, or you linger a moment longer in the scullery, hoping they will appear. And what of the fleeting nature of these loves? Servants often moved from one household to another, seeking better wages or conditions, or sometimes fleeing a difficult situation. A burgeoning affection could be abruptly severed by a notice of dismissal or the opportunity of a new position in another town. The heartache of such partings, often without a proper goodbye or even a chance to acknowledge the depth of what was shared, must have been a burden carried silently, privately. You would leave or they would leave, and the space they occupied in your secret world would suddenly be empty, a ghost in the corners of your memory. Yet, despite the inherent dangers and the high probability of heartbreak, these affections persisted. They were a testament to the enduring human need for connection, for intimacy, for love. In a life largely devoid of personal agency, these relationships were one of the few things over which you could claim some measure of control, even if that control was exercised in secrecy and rebellion. They were real, vivid, and deeply felt, providing a warmth that the cold stone walls of the mansion could never offer. Think of the desperation, the raw human need that would compel you to risk so much. To find solace in another's touch, another's understanding, when your world outside was so structured, so impersonal. These relationships, whether they were grand romances or quiet, enduring friendships, formed the emotional backbone of the servants' community. They fostered loyalty, provided comfort, and offered a sense of belonging in a world that constantly reminded you of your place, often a place of isolation and subordination. Perhaps a friendly cook might subtly arrange for two young lovers to have a moment alone, a knowing glance exchanged as she sends the housemaid to the pantry just as the footman is heading there. These small acts of solidarity, born of empathy and shared experience, were vital. They reinforced the idea that you were all in this together, and that protecting each other's happiness, however fragile, was an unspoken duty. But the fear never truly left you. The fear of being caught, of being shamed, of losing your livelihood, or even worse, of losing the one person who understood you in a way no one else could. This constant vigilance, this need to be always on guard, added a layer of intensity to every shared moment. It made every stolen kiss, every whispered confession feel monumental, a defiant assertion of your right to choose who you love. In the vast, impersonal machinery of a Victorian mansion, where your identity was often reduced to your uniform and your duties, these forbidden affections were a powerful assertion of self. They declared that you were more than just a servant. You were a person with a heart, with desires, with the capacity for deep love. And even if these loves were destined to remain in the shadows, unacknowledged by the world above, for you, They illuminated the very core of your secret, vibrant life below stairs. They were the defiant beat of a heart refusing to be silenced, echoing through the hidden corridors and quiet rooms, a testament to enduring love in a world designed to deny it. While some hearts found solace and defiance in the quiet courage of secret loves, another, equally vital system throbbed beneath the polished surface of the Victorian mansion. It was a network unseen, unheard by the family above, yet it was the true nervous system of the household. This was the shadow network, a pulsating web of information, gossip, and whispered warnings that connected every member of the downstairs staff. Imagine yourself now, moving through the labyrinthine passages below stairs. The world you inhabit is a vibrant ecosystem of hushed activity. Every creaking stair, every clatter of a pot, every muffled cough from a distant corridor carries a potential message. You learn to listen with more than just your ears. You listen with your very being, picking up the subtle currents that signal shifts in mood, impending events, or brewing storms. You are part of this network whether you realize it or not. The moment you step into the kitchen for your morning meal, the moment you exchange a knowing glance with a fellow housemaid in the linen cupboard, you are participating. Information flows like an underground river, sometimes a trickle, sometimes a torrent, but always constant. Consider the kitchen, the true heart of this shadow world. Here, amidst the comforting aromas of baking bread and simmering stews, the day's first intelligence is exchanged. The cook, often a formidable figure, presides over this domain, her ears as keen as her palate. She hears reports from the scullery made about the state of the silver, from the kitchen made about the supplies arriving, and from the footman who has just returned from an errand to the village. You watch as she processes this data, a general receiving dispatches from the field, piecing together a mosaic of the day ahead. Then there is the servants' hall, a more boisterous arena, especially during mealtimes. Here, propriety loosens just enough for tongues to wag more freely. You sit among your peers, your senses alert. One maid might mention the mistress's unusually late rise, sparking speculation about a headache or a secret late-night rendezvous. Another might report on the master's mood, a dark cloud gathering in his study indicating a potential financial worry or an argument with a business associate. The information is not always explicit. Often, it is conveyed through a raised eyebrow, a dismissive sniff, or a shrug that speaks volumes. You learn to read these subtle cues, adding them to your mental dossier. The back stairs, narrow and unlit, are another crucial artery of this network. As you ascend or descend, perhaps carrying a tray or a bucket, you might brush past a fellow servant. In that brief, fleeting moment, a whispered word, a significant look, or even just the tension in their posture can transmit vital intelligence. The young master is home early, a housemaid might murmur, her eyes wide, warning you to be extra cautious in the upper corridors. Or a footman might subtly gesture toward the drawing room, indicating that visitors have arrived unexpectedly. These fleeting encounters are often more potent than lengthy conversations, their brevity ensuring discretion. The laundry room, steamy and humid, offers a different kind of intelligence. As you sort through the family's garments, you handle intimate items that can tell stories of their own. A torn seam on a lady's gown might suggest a hurried undressing, perhaps after an illicit assignation. A stain on a gentleman's waistcoat could hint at an accident, or perhaps a clandestine drink. While you would never speak of these observations openly to the family, among your trusted peers, such details contribute to the collective understanding of the household's true goings-on. It is a tactile form of gossip, gleaned from the very fabric of their lives. Even the stables and the garden paths form part of this intricate communication system. The coachman, privy to the family's comings and goings, knows who visits whom and how often. He sees the furtive glances exchanged at the carriage door, the hurried notes passed. The gardener, his hands deep in the soil, might overhear conversations drifting from open windows, or discover discarded letters in secluded corners. These outdoor staff members act as the eyes and ears beyond the walls, bringing in external data that helps contextualize the internal narrative. The purpose of this shadow network is multifaceted. On one level, it is about survival. Knowing the mistress's temperaments for the day or the master's schedule allows you to anticipate demands, avoid pitfalls, and perform your duties with greater efficiency and less risk of reprimand. If you know the master is in a foul mood, you might take extra care not to disturb his study. If you know the mistress expects a surprise visitor, you can ensure the drawing room is impeccable. This shared knowledge empowers you to navigate the unpredictable currents of your employers' lives. But the network is also a source of community and solidarity. It is a shared secret, a collective understanding that binds you together against the hierarchical structure of the house. You are all in this together, and the exchange of information fosters a sense of unity. When one servant is in trouble, others might subtly warn them or offer support. If a new, particularly demanding routine is implemented, the shared exasperation builds a bond. This shared information helps to level the playing field, giving you a quiet power in a world where you often feel powerless. And then, of course, there is the scuttlebutt, the delicious, irresistible gossip about the family above. Who is courting whom? Is the young lady truly in love, or is it a marriage of convenience? Is the master struggling with debts? Why did Aunt Mildred leave so abruptly last week? Every glance, every raised voice, every unusual visitor becomes a piece of a larger puzzle. You find yourselves piecing together these fragments, forming narratives, predicting outcomes. It is a form of collective storytelling, often more dramatic and compelling than any novel. This gossip is not always malicious. Sometimes, it is simply human curiosity, a way to understand the lives of those you serve, who remain largely enigmatic despite your constant proximity. It offers a fleeting glimpse into their struggles, their passions, their flaws, reminding you that they too are imperfect beings, despite their elevated status. It humanizes them, even as it sometimes exposes their vulnerabilities. The language of this network is often subtle, encoded. A direct question about the mistress's health might be met with a casual comment about her appetite at breakfast. A query about the young master's romantic interests could be answered with a knowing look at the fresh flowers he brought in for a specific room. You learn to interpret these indirect signals, to read between the lines of polite conversation, to understand the deeper meanings beneath the superficial pleasantries. Sometimes the information is far more critical, a genuine warning. Perhaps a new maid is particularly clumsy, and others discreetly advise you to keep a watchful eye on your belongings when she is near. Or a certain upstairs family member has a reputation for being overly familiar with the female staff, and older servants subtly alert new arrivals to maintain distance and caution. These are the protective instincts of the community, safeguarding its members from potential harm or exploitation. The risk of this network, however, is ever present. Being caught gossiping, especially about the family, could lead to severe reprimand, even dismissal. Trust is a fragile commodity. A misstep, a word spoken to the wrong person could unravel the entire system. Therefore, discretion is paramount. You learn who to trust, who is reliable, and who might betray a confidence for their own gain. The bonds of loyalty within this shadow network are forged in shared secrets and mutual understanding, often stronger than the formal ties that bind you to your employers. Imagine a sudden hush falling over the kitchen as the house bell rings unexpectedly, signaling the mistress's impending descent. The flurry of activity ceases, voices drop to a whisper, and any incriminating conversation evaporates into the air. This rapid shift, this collective discipline, is a testament to the network's efficiency and its ingrained awareness of danger. You become adept at this instant transformation, presenting an image of quiet industry while your mind still processes the last piece of shared intelligence. The shadow network extends beyond the confines of a single mansion. Servants from different houses, meeting in the village on errands, exchange news. A footman from one estate might pass on information about a prospective employer to a fellow footman from another, offering insights into temperaments, workloads, and conditions. These external connections add another layer to the intelligence gathering, creating an even broader web of shared knowledge. This broader network ensures that reputations, both of servants and of employers, precede them. If a household has a reputation for harsh treatment or poor wages, it becomes difficult to attract good staff. Conversely, a servant known for their skill and discretion might find it easier to secure new, better placements through word of mouth within this extensive, informal community. So, as you go about your duties, polishing silver, scrubbing floors, serving meals, remember that beneath the veneer of obedience and quiet efficiency, a powerful current flows. You are a part of a collective consciousness, a silent society observing and interpreting the world around it. Your senses are heightened, your understanding of human nature sharpened. This shadow network, fueled by whispers and shared glances, by the need for survival and the craving for connection, transforms your solitary existence into a communal one. It is a world where information is currency, where discretion is gold, and where the unseen connections between people are as vital as the very foundations of the grand house you inhabit. It is the beating heart of the secret world below stairs, a testament to the enduring human need to communicate, to understand, and to find solidarity in shared experience. The mansion may stand as a monument to its owner's wealth, but its true lifeblood courses through the veins of this intricate, invisible network, known only to those who live and work within its shadows. The intricate, invisible network humming beneath the grand facade of the mansion is indeed its lifeblood. But that lifeblood flows through bodies, through flesh and bone that endure the relentless grind of Victorian service. While the secrets and solidarity provide a shield for the soul, the physical world exacts a heavy, undeniable toll. This is the unseen cost of that elegant illusion, the reality behind the quiet efficiency, the broken bodies and weary souls that make the opulent machine turn. You wake, not to the gentle seep of dawn, but to the harsh, unforgiving chime of the staff bell, often long before the sun even considers rising. The air in your narrow, unheated attic room bites with a bitter chill, a stark contrast to the thick duvets and roaring fires enjoyed by those you serve. You pull on your uniform, stiff and cold, feeling the chill deep in your bones before the day has even begun. There is no time for lingering, no moment for quiet contemplation. The house is waking and you must be ready to meet its demands. Imagine your hands, raw and red from endless scrubbing, calloused from lifting heavy coal scuttles, and pricked by pins from mending clothes by dim candlelight. The scullery maid's hands are perpetually steeped in scalding water, lye soap, and the greasy residue of 100 meals. Her fingers ache, her skin cracks, and the cold of the early morning water used to rinse pots and pans is an exquisite torture. For the housemaid, her knees are her constant companions, worn to a permanent ache from hours spent on cold stone floors, scrubbing away every speck of dust and grime. You can feel the sharp grit beneath your kneecaps as you move from one room to the next, polishing, sweeping, beating rugs with a rhythmic, exhausting thud. The kitchen, for all its warmth, presents its own dangers. The cook and kitchen maids navigate a world of blistering heat from vast ranges, steam that scalds the skin, and sharp knives that demand constant, unwavering attention. Burns are common, deep cuts of frequent occurrence, often treated with little more than a piece of clean cloth and a stoic shrug. A severe injury could mean the end of your employment and with it, your livelihood. There is no sick pay, no workers' compensation, only the harsh truth that another pair of hands is always waiting to take your place. Consider the sheer physical labor. You might carry buckets of water up flights of stairs, heavy trunks for traveling family members, or vast trays of food from the kitchen to the dining room, all while maintaining an impassive face and an upright posture. The footman, with his grand livery and elegant bearing, might spend his morning heaving logs for fireplaces, running errands across town, or standing for hours on end, attentive to the slightest summons. His back aches, his feet throb, but he must never show it. The pressure is constant, a physical burden compounded by the expectation of effortless grace. These are not occasional tasks. They are daily routines repeated hundreds of times, day in and day out, for years on end. The cumulative effect is devastating. Many servants develop chronic conditions early in life. Rheumatism from damp, cold living quarters and constant exposure to water. Varicose veins from standing for long hours. Respiratory problems from dusty environments and poor ventilation. Their bodies, though young when they enter service, often age prematurely, marked by the scars and strains of relentless toil. Beyond the physical, there is the silent attrition of the spirit, the weariness that settles deep in the soul. You live a life of profound paradox, surrounded by immense wealth, yet possessing almost nothing of your own. You are constantly in the presence of others, yet often profoundly alone. Your entire existence revolves around the needs and whims of your employers, leaving little room for your own desires, your own identity. The lack of privacy is absolute. Your sleeping quarters are often shared, your movements monitored, your conversations overheard. There is no true sanctuary, no quiet corner where you can truly be yourself. Every action, every word, every gesture is scrutinized, measured against an invisible standard of deference and propriety. This constant surveillance fosters a deep-seated anxiety, a perpetual fear of making a mistake, of incurring displeasure, of stepping out of line. The smallest infraction could lead to a severe reprimand or worse, dismissal. Imagine the homesickness, the quiet ache for family and friends left behind. For many young servants, particularly those from rural areas, the mansion is a world away from everything they have ever known. Letters are rare luxuries, visits even rarer. You hear snippets of the outside world, news of your village perhaps, but you are a world apart, tethered to the house and its demands. Loneliness can be a heavy cloak, wrapping around you in the quiet moments of the night, or when you observe the intimate family scenes of your employers, a life you can only ever observe, never truly share. Your emotions too are strictly policed. You must be cheerful when required, invisible when not, and always respectful. Anger, sadness, frustration, even joy, must be carefully suppressed or expressed only within the safe confines of the servants' hall, away from the prying eyes and ears of the family. This constant emotional labor, the act of presenting a placid, agreeable front regardless of your inner state, is profoundly draining. You learn to wear a mask, to bury your true feelings deep inside, a habit that can make genuine connection even with your fellow servants a complex dance. The price of service, then, is not merely the meager wages you receive. It is paid in the aching joints, the blistered hands, the weary feet. It is paid in the suppressed tears, the unspoken desires, the quiet despair of a life lived for others. It is paid in the loss of youth, the erosion of personal freedom, and the constant psychological pressure to be less than human, more like a finely tuned instrument. Yet you endure. You rise each morning, despite the aches and the exhaustion, and you begin again. Because beneath the quiet efficiency, beneath the broken bodies and the weary souls, there is an unyielding spirit, a testament to the human capacity for resilience, for finding purpose even in the most demanding of circumstances. The grand house runs on the physical and emotional sacrifices of those who serve, a hidden testament to the true cost of Victorian splendor. You endure. You rise each morning, despite the aches and the exhaustion, and you begin again. But for how long can a human spirit truly thrive under such unrelenting weight? The longing for a different life, a life where you are not merely an extension of the house itself, it burns. It flickers like a gaslight in the servants' hall after midnight, a quiet, insistent flame. For many, service was a temporary station, a means to an end, a path trod before a greater journey could begin. The grand house, for all its imposing presence, was not always a lifelong prison. Dreams, however small, however secret, existed. And so did routes of escape, some planned with meticulous care, others stumbled upon through sheer luck or desperation. Consider first the most traditional and, for women, often the most desired escape: marriage. You watch the young ladies of the house prepare for their balls, their silks rustling, their laughter echoing. They seek husbands for status, for wealth, for the continuation of their lineage. You, on the other hand, seek a husband for a different kind of freedom. You seek a roof that is truly your own, a hearth where your labor is for your family, not for an indifferent master. You yearn for the right to choose your own hours, however humble that choice may be, to sleep in a bed you own, to raise children who will bear your name. You save what little you can, a few pennies hidden deep in a worn purse, dreaming of a modest dowry that might tempt a respectable tradesman or a skilled artisan. Perhaps a carpenter, strong of hand and kind of eye, who could build you a small, sturdy home. Or a shopkeeper with the promise of a compact apartment above his store, a place where you might finally be mistress, not maid. The courtship is often brief, conducted on your one day off, or through hushed whispers in the fading light of a Sunday afternoon walk. You present yourself in your best, mended dress, trying to look genteel, hopeful, efficient, everything a good wife should be. But the reality of marriage for a former servant could often bring a different kind of servitude. If you marry a working man, his wages might be precarious, dependent on the whims of trade or the vagaries of industry. Your new home, though your own, might be smaller, colder, and still demand endless labor. Children arrive swiftly, bringing new duties, new mouths to feed, new layers of responsibility. The hope of escape can often transform into merely a different set of chains, albeit chains of your own making or at least your own choosing. The grand house, with its harsh rules and demanding schedule, sometimes begins to look almost comfortable in retrospect, a trade-off for the crushing poverty and uncertainty that could await outside its formidable walls. Yet for many, the mere fact of choice, of personal agency, however limited, was enough to make the leap. Not everyone sought to leave service entirely. For some, the escape was simply to a better, less demanding household, a smaller one where the work might be lighter, the mistress kinder, or the hierarchy less oppressive. For others, the ambition lay in upward mobility within the very structure of service. You might dedicate yourself to mastering a specific skill, rising through the ranks to a specialized position. A scullery maid could aspire to become a respected cook, eventually taking charge of a bustling kitchen, dictating menus, managing provisions, and overseeing junior staff. A footman might dream of becoming a valet, attending directly to his master, a position of trust and relative proximity to power, carrying with it a certain prestige and often higher wages. A housemaid might, through years of diligent service and sharp observation, learn the intricate workings of a grand establishment, eventually ascending to the esteemed position of housekeeper, managing the entire domestic staff, holding the keys to every room, and becoming a trusted confidant of the lady of the house. These roles, while still service, offered a degree of authority, comfort, and sometimes even respect that was unimaginable to those at the bottom of the ladder. They represented a form of survival, a way to carve out a dignified existence within a system that often denied it. Beyond the familiar shores of England, tales were whispered of new worlds, lands of vast opportunity and less rigid social structures. Emigration became a powerful lure for many, a radical break from the stifling constraints of Victorian class. America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, these distant lands promised fresh starts, the chance to own land, to earn better wages, to forge an identity free from the burdens of one's birth. You might pool your meager savings with others, or accept passage in exchange for a period of indentured labor, signing away your initial years in the new country to repay the cost of the journey. It was a terrifying leap into the unknown, a severance from everything you had ever known, family, friends, the familiar streets of your hometown. You faced weeks, perhaps months at sea, crammed into the steerage of a heaving ship, battling seasickness, boredom, and fear. But for those with courage and a desperate hope for a better future, it was a leap worth taking. Many domestic servants found success abroad, some becoming farmers, others opening small businesses, and still others finding respected positions in less formal households, often writing back letters filled with wonder at the freedom and prosperity they had found, further fueling the dreams of those left behind. For some, the skills honed in service could be parlayed into independent ventures. Your nimble fingers, your practiced hand with a needle and thread, your precise knowledge of cooking or cleaning, these were assets. Perhaps you dreamed of opening a small laundry, taking in washing from other households, or establishing a small bakery, selling your perfectly crafted loaves and pastries to the local community. A lady's maid, skilled in dressmaking, might aspire to set up her own modiste shop. A valet might open a gentleman's outfitter. It required immense capital, a good head for business, and even more courage. The competition was fierce, the risks high, but the reward was the ultimate freedom. To be your own master, to dictate your own terms of work, to keep all the profits from your labor. These were not easy paths, fraught with the danger of failure and financial ruin, but for the select few with an entrepreneurial spirit and a relentless work ethic, they offered a genuine escape into self-sufficiency. Then there were the rarer, often more challenging routes that involved education and alternative careers. In secret, by the flickering candlelight of a shared bedroom, you might pore over a borrowed book, painstakingly teaching yourself to read and write, or to improve the rudimentary lessons you received as a child. A kindly governess might secretly teach a favorite parlor maid, recognizing a quick mind and a thirst for knowledge. The dream of becoming a teacher, a shop assistant, a clerk, or even a typist in a burgeoning office was a distant, often impossible star. These professions required literacy, numeracy, and a polish that was hard to acquire in the dusty confines of the servants' hall. But for those who managed to acquire these skills, often through incredible personal sacrifice and tireless effort, a world beyond domestic service awaited, a world of greater intellectual engagement and personal dignity, even if the wages remained modest. And then, there are the daily escapes, the quiet acts of survival that kept one from breaking entirely. These were not grand departures, but vital moments of personal reclaiming. A stolen moment in the garden, inhaling the scent of roses, pretending for an instant that this beauty was your own. A whispered joke with a fellow servant, a shared secret that forged a bond of camaraderie against the isolation. The letters you wrote home, carefully omitting the harshest truths, creating a narrative of quiet triumph and resilience, keeping your family from worrying and maintaining your own pride. The stories you told yourself in the darkness of your shared room, the dreams you wove of futures that might never come, but sustained you nonetheless. These were the mental retreats, the emotional havens, the small rebellions against the erosion of self. They were the invisible escape routes, ensuring that even when the body was bound, the spirit found ways to soar, however briefly, however secretly. For the Victorian servant, survival was not merely about enduring the day-to-day. It was about the persistent, quiet yearning for something more, the strategic planning, the daring leaps, and the small, defiant acts of self-preservation that allowed them to navigate a world that often sought to erase their individuality. The grand houses stood as monuments to wealth and power, but within their walls, a different kind of human drama unfolded, a testament to the unyielding spirit that sought freedom, dignity, and a life beyond service. You have glimpsed the hidden emotional landscapes, the quiet acts of defiance, the daily struggle for self-preservation within the grand, imposing walls of the Victorian mansion. But how do we truly hear the voices of those who served? How do we move beyond the cold pronouncements of household ledgers, beyond the veiled illusions in aristocratic memoirs, to truly understand the humanity thriving beneath the starched uniforms and dutiful silence? For centuries, the story of the working class, and particularly the story of domestic servants, was largely unwritten by their own hands. History, as it was then recorded, belonged to the powerful, the privileged, the educated elite who had both the leisure and the means to commit their lives to paper. The servant, by contrast, lived a life of constant labor, their days filled with physical demands, their evenings often too exhausted for the meticulous task of writing. Their education, if they received any at all, was often rudimentary, focused on practical skills rather than literary pursuits. And yet, despite these formidable barriers, glimpses of their inner worlds, their dreams, their disappointments, and their shrewd observations of the world around them do exist. You must listen closely, searching not in the grand libraries of the gentry, but in the forgotten corners, the dusty attics, the humble trunks passed down through generations. You seek out the faint ink on brittle pages, the fragile testament of a life lived largely out of sight. Imagine yourself sifting through old papers in a provincial archive. You carefully turn the page of a small leather-bound diary, its cover worn smooth by countless hands. This is not the elegant script of a lady of the house, detailing her social engagements and worries over her wardrobe. This is a practical hand, perhaps a bit clumsy but clear. It belongs to Sarah, a kitchen maid, and her entries are terse, sometimes fragmented, yet deeply revealing. She writes of the unrelenting cold in the scullery during winter, her fingers raw from scrubbing pots, the endless piles of dishes stretching before her like an insurmountable mountain range. You read of her longing for a day off, a rare Sunday when she might visit her sister in the next village, a journey she describes as an escape, a brief taste of freedom. She recounts the injustice of a scolding from the cook, a harsh word for a small mistake, and the simmering resentment that she dares not voice aloud. These are not grand narratives, but the intimate, granular details of a life defined by service. Then you might discover a bundle of letters, tied with faded ribbon. These are the precious correspondences exchanged between a housemaid named Agnes and her sweetheart, a stable hand from a neighboring estate. You hold them gently, sensing the weight of emotion within each carefully folded sheet. Her handwriting is more refined than Sarah's, a testament to a better education, perhaps at a village school before she entered service. In these letters, Agnes speaks of her hopes for marriage, her fears of never being able to save enough money for a home of their own, the longing for a life where she might be mistress of her own small hearth, rather than endlessly stoking the fires of another's. She details the gossip of the servants' hall, the occasional kindnesses of her employer, and the petty tyrannies of the head housekeeper. You hear her wry humor, her quiet strength, and her profound desire for autonomy. These letters are a lifeline, a connection to a world beyond the confines of the mansion, a way to maintain a sense of self and future. And sometimes, though far less frequently, you unearth the memoirs. These are often written much later in life, after a servant has left service, perhaps in old age, looking back with a mixture of nostalgia, bitterness, and clear-eyed wisdom. These are invaluable as they offer a more reflective, comprehensive account. Imagine sitting with an elderly woman, her voice raspy with age as she recounts her life in service, her memories sharpened by time and distance. She tells you of her first day as a scullery maid, a small child overwhelmed by the vastness of the kitchen, the towering ranges, the stern faces of the senior staff. She describes the rigid hierarchy, the unspoken rules, the delicate dance of deference and authority. She speaks of the friendships forged in the shared adversity of the servants' hall, the camaraderie, the whispered jokes, the shared complaints that lightened the burden of their days. She might recall the thrill of a forbidden flirtation with a footman, the secret rendezvous in the kitchen garden under the cloak of night, a fleeting moment of stolen romance. These voices, once silent or merely echoes, begin to form a chorus. They tell a story of resilience, of ingenuity, and of a persistent human spirit that refused to be extinguished by hard work and social constraints. You learn that many servants used their literacy, however basic, to educate themselves further, poring over newspapers and books during their precious moments of free time. They discussed politics, religion, and the news of the day, forming their own opinions, sometimes surprisingly radical ones, beneath the veneer of obedience. You discover that the act of writing itself was often an act of quiet rebellion. To record one's thoughts, feelings, and experiences was to assert one's existence, to declare that one's life had meaning and deserved documentation. In a world where servants were often treated as invisible extensions of the household, mere hands to perform tasks, a diary or a letter was a powerful testament to their individuality. It was a private space where they could be themselves, unfiltered by the expectations of their employers or the strictures of their station. Consider the laundress who keeps a meticulous account of her wages and expenses, not just for practical reasons, but as a silent declaration of her economic independence and her careful management of her limited resources. Or the governess who uses her personal journal to articulate her intellectual frustrations, her yearning for a different kind of life, a life of scholarly pursuit rather than the endless repetition of lessons for spoiled children. These are not merely records, they are acts of self-definition. These narratives also challenge simplistic portrayals of Victorian servants. They were not a monolithic group. You encounter the devoutly religious servant who finds solace and strength in her faith, carefully transcribing scripture into her private notebook. You meet the more cynical servant, who views her employers with a detached amusement, noting their foibles and extravagances with a sharp, critical eye. You hear the voices of those who found genuine affection and respect for their masters and mistresses, and those who harbored deep resentment for their perceived injustices. The spectrum of human experience within the servants' quarters was as vast and complex as that in the grand drawing rooms above. But their stories often carry a particular weight, a poignancy born of their vulnerability and their often unrecognized contributions to the smooth running of the Victorian household. They reveal the sheer physical endurance required, the emotional toll of constant availability, and the constant navigation of social boundaries. These diaries and letters are not always easy to read. They can be sparse, encoded with the unspoken context of the time, or filled with abbreviations and regional dialects that require careful deciphering. Sometimes the most telling details are not what is written, but what is omitted, the silent spaces speaking volumes about what could not be safely committed to paper. You become a detective, piecing together fragments, searching for patterns, listening for the emotional resonance behind the plain facts. You might find a cook's recipe book, passed down from her mother, containing not only culinary instructions but also small notes about family remedies, local lore, and even a child's drawing tucked between the pages. It is a family history, a culinary legacy, and a personal archive all in one. These are the small, tangible remnants of lives lived with purpose, love, and struggle. Through these collected voices, you begin to understand the true cost of Victorian splendor. You see the faces behind the endless labor, the intelligence behind the deferential silence, the beating hearts beneath the unassuming attire. These are the voices that whisper across the centuries, breaking through the historical silence, demanding to be heard. They are the untold stories, finally given their rightful place in the narrative of a monumental era, reminding you that even in the most rigid of social structures, the human spirit finds a way to express itself, to endure, and to leave its indelible mark. Then you might discover a bundle of letters, tied with faded ribbon. These are the precious correspondences exchanged between a housemaid named Agnes and her sweetheart, a stable hand from a neighboring estate. You hold them gently, sensing the weight of emotion within each carefully folded sheet. Her handwriting is more refined than Sarah's, a testament to a better education, perhaps at a village school before she entered service. In these letters, Agnes speaks of her hopes for marriage, her fears of never being able to save enough money for a home of their own, the longing for a life where she might be mistress of her own small hearth, rather than endlessly stoking the fires of another's. She details the gossip of the servants' hall, the occasional kindnesses of her employer, and the petty tyrannies of the head housekeeper. You hear her wry humor, her quiet strength, and her profound desire for autonomy. These letters are a lifeline, a connection to a world beyond the confines of the mansion, a way to maintain a sense of self and future. And sometimes, though far less frequently, you unearth the memoirs. These are often written much later in life, after a servant has left service, perhaps in old age, looking back with a mixture of nostalgia, bitterness, and clear-eyed wisdom. These are invaluable as they offer a more reflective, comprehensive account. Imagine sitting with an elderly woman, her voice raspy with age as she recounts her life in service, her memories sharpened by time and distance. She tells you of her first day as a scullery maid, a small child overwhelmed by the vastness of the kitchen, the towering ranges, the stern faces of the senior staff. She describes the rigid hierarchy, the unspoken rules, the delicate dance of deference and authority. She speaks of the friendships forged in the shared adversity of the servants' hall, the camaraderie, the whispered jokes, the shared complaints that lightened the burden of their days. She might recall the thrill of a forbidden flirtation with a footman, the secret rendezvous in the kitchen garden under the cloak of night, a fleeting moment of stolen romance. These voices, once silent or merely echoes, begin to form a chorus. They tell a story of resilience, of ingenuity, and of a persistent human spirit that refused to be extinguished by hard work and social constraints. You learn that many servants used their literacy, however basic, to educate themselves further, poring over newspapers and books during their precious moments of free time. They discussed politics, religion, and the news of the day, forming their own opinions, sometimes surprisingly radical ones, beneath the veneer of obedience. You discover that the act of writing itself was often an act of quiet rebellion. To record one's thoughts, feelings, and experiences was to assert one's existence, to declare that one's life had meaning and deserved documentation. In a world where servants were often treated as invisible extensions of the household, mere hands to perform tasks, a diary or a letter was a powerful testament to their individuality. It was a private space where they could be themselves, unfiltered by the expectations of their employers or the strictures of their station. Consider the laundress who keeps a meticulous account of her wages and expenses, not just for practical reasons, but as a silent declaration of her economic independence and her careful management of her limited resources. Or the governess who uses her personal journal to articulate her intellectual frustrations, her yearning for a different kind of life, a life of scholarly pursuit rather than the endless repetition of lessons for spoiled children. These are not merely records, they are acts of self-definition. These narratives also challenge simplistic portrayals of Victorian servants. They were not a monolithic group. You encounter the devoutly religious servant who finds solace and strength in her faith, carefully transcribing scripture into her private notebook. You meet the more cynical servant, who views her employers with a detached amusement, noting their foibles and extravagances with a sharp, critical eye. You hear the voices of those who found genuine affection and respect for their masters and mistresses, and those who harbored deep resentment for their perceived injustices. The spectrum of human experience within the servants' quarters was as vast and complex as that in the grand drawing rooms above. But their stories often carry a particular weight, a poignancy born of their vulnerability and their often unrecognized contributions to the smooth running of the Victorian household. They reveal the sheer physical endurance required, the emotional toll of constant availability, and the constant navigation of social boundaries. These diaries and letters are not always easy to read. They can be sparse, encoded with the unspoken context of the time, or filled with abbreviations and regional dialects that require careful deciphering. Sometimes the most telling details are not what is written, but what is omitted, the silent spaces speaking volumes about what could not be safely committed to paper. You become a detective, piecing together fragments, searching for patterns, listening for the emotional resonance behind the plain facts. You might find a cook's recipe book, passed down from her mother, containing not only culinary instructions but also small notes about family remedies, local lore, and even a child's drawing tucked between the pages. It is a family history, a culinary legacy, and a personal archive all in one. These are the small, tangible remnants of lives lived with purpose, love, and struggle. Through these collected voices, you begin to understand the true cost of Victorian splendor. You see the faces behind the endless labor, the intelligence behind the deferential silence, the beating hearts beneath the unassuming attire. These are the voices that whisper across the centuries, breaking through the historical silence, demanding to be heard. They are the untold stories, finally given their rightful place in the narrative of a monumental era, reminding you that even in the most rigid of social structures, the human spirit finds a way to express itself, to endure, and to leave its indelible mark. You have heard their whispers, felt the echoes of their endurance. Now step beyond the polished grandeur of the drawing rooms and into the hidden engine of the Victorian house, the unseen world where its very splendor was forged. This is not the elegant entrance hall, but the discreet side door, often tucked away, out of sight from polite society. Imagine yourself approaching a grand Victorian mansion, not through the imposing front gates, but along a narrow, cobbled path winding around the side. Here, the meticulously manicured garden gives way to a more utilitarian space, perhaps a coal chute or bins for refuse. You arrive at a modest, often unmarked door, usually painted a dark, unassuming color. This is the servant's entrance, the threshold between two vastly different worlds that coexisted under one roof. You push open the heavy door and step inside. Immediately the air changes. It is warmer, heavier, thick with the lingering scent of coal smoke, cooking fat, and damp linen. The quiet hush of the main house is replaced by a faint hum of activity, a symphony of distant clanking, splashing, and murmuring voices. You are no longer in the realm of ornate chandeliers and velvet draperies, but in a functional, utilitarian space designed for work, not display. You descend a narrow, uncarpeted staircase, the stone steps worn smooth by countless thousands of footsteps. Each step takes you deeper into the subterranean world, often lit only by gaslight or small high windows that offer a meager slice of sky. This is the below-stairs domain, a labyrinth of passages, sculleries, pantries, and laundries, all meticulously planned to keep the messy, demanding business of running a household out of sight and out of mind of its genteel inhabitants above. The heart of this hidden empire is the kitchen, a vast, bustling space that stands in stark contrast to the elegant dining room it serves. Picture the enormous cast-iron range, constantly stoked with coal, radiating an intense, almost unbearable heat. Copper pots and pans gleam on racks, though many are blackened from years of direct flame. The air is alive with the sizzling of roasting meat, the bubbling of sauces, the sharp tang of onions, and the sweet scent of baking bread. Here the cook, a formidable figure, reigns supreme, her authority absolute within her culinary kingdom. You might see scullery maids, their hands raw and red from endless scrubbing, washing dishes in scalding water, or kitchen maids chopping vegetables with practiced speed. The noise is constant. The clatter of crockery, the hiss of steam, the sharp thud of a cleaver, the terse commands from the cook. Beyond the kitchen you find the scullery, a smaller, damper room, often lined with shelves of china and glass. It is a place of endless cleaning, where mountains of dishes are scrubbed, dried, and polished to a sparkling finish, ready for the next elaborate meal. Then there is the larder, cool and dark, filled with provisions, hanging game, salted meats, barrels of flour, and shelves of preserves. The housemaid's pantry is next, stocked with cleaning supplies, brushes, mops, and dusters, each object having its designated place. Further down the passage, perhaps near the back door where deliveries are made, is the lamp room. Here, lamps are cleaned, trimmed, and refilled daily, an essential task in a world reliant on artificial light. The smell of oil is distinct. Nearby, the laundry, a cavernous space filled with steaming tubs, mangles, and drying racks. Here, laundresses toil in sweltering heat, their arms strong from endless scrubbing and wringing of heavy linens. The air here is thick with moisture and the scent of soap, the sound of rubbing and slapping fabric a rhythmic accompaniment to their labor. The lives of these servants began long before the master or mistress awoke. Imagine yourself as a housemaid rising in the dim light before dawn, perhaps at 5 or 6 in the morning. You pull on your simple uniform, the dark dress and white apron that signify your role. Your first task is to light the fires throughout the house, carefully carrying buckets of coal up seemingly endless flights of stairs, laying kindling, and ensuring a cheerful blaze awaits your employer. Then begins the relentless polishing. Brass, silver, furniture, every surface demanding a high sheen. Dusting, sweeping, carrying hot water for baths, making beds, emptying chamber pots. The physical demands are immense and unceasing. Footmen too had their early morning rituals. They would clean boots, lay out clothes, and prepare the dining room for breakfast, their movements precise and practiced. They might run errands, deliver messages, or stand sentinel by the front door, a silent, imposing presence. The butler, the highest-ranking male servant, would oversee it all, a watchful eye on the other staff, ensuring the smooth operation of the household machine. The social hierarchy within the servants' hall was as rigid and complex as that of the family upstairs. The cook and butler often had their own sitting rooms, separate from the general servants' hall where maids and junior staff took their meals. Every position had its duties, its privileges, and its place in the pecking order. A strict code of conduct governed interactions, with deference shown to those of higher rank. Yet, amidst this relentless toil and rigid structure, moments of shared humanity emerged. The servants' hall, though functional, was also a space for community. Picture the evening meal after the family upstairs had dined. Here, the servants finally sat together, tired but perhaps relaxed enough to share a joke, a complaint, or a piece of gossip. These shared meals, often simple and hearty, were a vital source of camaraderie, a brief respite from the demanding schedule and the omnipresent gaze of their employers. Stories were told, news from the outside world shared through letters, and friendships forged in the crucible of shared experience. Privacy was a luxury almost unknown to servants. Their sleeping quarters were often cramped, unadorned rooms, sometimes shared with 2 or 3 others. Maids might sleep in attic rooms, far from the warmth of the lower floors, or in small, partitioned spaces near their work areas. Footmen and valets might have slightly better accommodations, but always functional, never luxurious. Personal belongings were few and cherished, often locked away in small trunks. Even their free time was limited, perhaps a few hours on a Sunday afternoon, usually spent visiting family or attending church. Despite the lack of personal space and the demanding nature of their work, servants found ways to carve out small spheres of individuality. A neatly pressed ribbon, a carefully mended garment, a treasured letter from home, a hidden drawing, or a book read by candlelight after a long day. These small acts were expressions of self, subtle assertions of their humanity in a system that often sought to render them invisible. Their lives were not just about labor. They were lives filled with their own hopes, dreams, heartbreaks, and aspirations. Many hoped to save enough money to start their own businesses, or to marry and establish their own homes. For some, service was a temporary stepping stone. For others, it was a lifelong career, bringing a certain stability if not independence. The physical toll, however, was immense. Years of heavy lifting, endless standing, exposure to heat and cold, and often poor diet could lead to chronic ailments. Their bodies bore the marks of their dedication. So, as you step back through the servants' entrance, leaving the clamor and the heat behind, you carry with you a new understanding. The grand Victorian mansions, symbols of wealth and power, were not built by magic. They were built, maintained, and made to run seamlessly by the tireless, often invisible labor of hundreds of thousands of servants. They are the true builders of Victorian splendor, their sweat and dedication woven into the very fabric of an era. Their lives, though often secret and unrecorded in the grand narratives, were rich with resilience, community, and an enduring human spirit.